there, welcome back to our show. Today I'm going to do a double bill. This is my double bill to start the new year. I try and watch something from a first film of the new year to inspire me to watch good stuff. So it's just like a self-motivation thing. So this year I watched two films. One was A Trip to the Moon, which was like 10-15 minutes long, and then there's a Beauty and the Beast, which was the Polish version of Beauty and the Beast that was directed by Juraj Herz, who also directed The Cremator. And this is a really different, dark version of Beauty and the Beast. I'll get to that soon. First of all, I'm going to The Trip to the Moon, which was the first film I actually watched. Now, obviously I've seen it before, but I hadn't watched it for a while, and I'm actually watching the projector. I watched both of these in the projector, and it was I had a great time. It was a really good way to start the new year. Now, Trip to the Moon is George Méliès film. It's this famous one about these Parisians who decide to build a rocket ship and go to the moon. Then they get to the moon, they're dealing with all these weird phantoms and things that are attacking them. They have to escape the moon and rocket back, and one of the phantoms comes with them. That's a very simple story. It's all done, with 1910 technology. They're Méliès came to the theatre, so they built all this stuff, and it's like it's basically built to be like very simple effects, very simple imagination, like basically 2D effects of things flying, and you're meant to actually build a lot in your mind, really. And a lot of it's practical, and a lot of it really depends on what you're imagining. All the costumes are all over the top and theatrical. But it's got a mood to it that actually really works. Even now, you're seeing a psychology of a certain time play out. This is the fantasy of 1910s France, where there was a lot of invention here before World War One came and destroyed so many people that were very artistic and very into life. So it's that kind of sense, this naive, romantic sense of the world and what it could be, and flying to the moon and what's out there, and creating this imagination is very Jules Verne influence from his A Trip to the Moon book. But I mean, it really is it's one of those ones it's more experience than something you can analyse. It's just so well done, though. I mean, there's a sense of like the real world's fantastic even before you get to the moon. It's very kind of old fashioned. There's only been men going to the moon. The women are just there to be there and support the men. It's that kind of world they're showing, this kind of scientific, puritanical male world that's probably scared of women and dolls, so they're really into their toys. Which the film just shows. It's like, I'm sure that was like that as well behind the scenes, but here you get it. It's like these guys who are really into their toys. They're going to shoot to the moon, and they're going to experience the moon. Of course, they get there and they're attacked by all these kind of creatures. It's actually a film's probably more interesting now you know what the moon actually is, which is this dead place. So nowadays, I always love stuff like A Trip to the Moon or this film where it's an imagination of what the moon could have, what they imagined the moon was. Because it's so much more interesting than what the moon actually is. Our imagination was better than reality in this case. And I kind of miss that naive stuff in filmmaking, in this sense of like, you have to stick to reality. So I remember a couple of years ago when John Carter came out, because it was taking place on Mars in 1900s or beginning of the 20th century, we all knew at that point that the Mars was a wasteland. We all know Mars is dead. So this whole idea of this kind of fantastic world on Mars, and this guy doing all these super heroic things, people just couldn't take it as reality. It just was too much for them. And it becomes this thing of, are you that boring? You can't take fantasy. It's okay, you can take fantasy with Star Wars, which is a different galaxy, but if it's in your own solar system, we're saying, let's imagine something. You can't take it. It's like, it's so dull, so boring. But this is a real enjoyable film. It's so naive. It's so like old-fashioned. It's a world that's no longer there. It's a world that's moved on, and a lot of problems with that world. It really was a patriarchy. I mean, people talk about patriarchy now, It's like, it's kind of absurd now. I mean, things have moved on. Then it truly was a patriarchy. That's a true patriarchy. This is mild, what we've got now. And it's changing all the time, so it's not, there's so many women now who are in charge of countries. It's in a varies country to country, of course. But this is a much more old-fashioned thing. This was when women were still trying to get the vote. So it's a very different world. It's been romanticised in this film, but it's really interesting to see. If you avoid implications, just go by the fantasy of it, which I think was what they were generally about. I don't think they were really interested in politics at the time. They wanted this fantastical imagination, taking a genre, conceits of the time, and just do this thing. They weren't interested in pushing new grounds for women or anything. They were just trying to do this fantasy movie. And it's there, it's wonderful. Now we're going to Polish Beauty and the Beast. Now, this is a wonderful film. Solitary Ronan, who I do my podcast with, he's also done a video on it, which I'd recommend going to see that one, because it's a really good video, and he loved it more than I did. I enjoyed the film, but I think he really, really enjoyed it. So he's more passionate for it than I'm probably going to show, because I think it's a really good film. The visualization, the beast design is wonderful, because it allows the character to go in a different direction, and I adore like old-fashioned Eastern European worlds shown on screen. There was a period in the 50s, 60s and 70s in Eastern Europe when under communism, where they had to be subversive quietly. They didn't agree with communism, they didn't agree with the constraints of that era. They were basically occupied countries, so they had to be subversive and be very careful what they said, because you could easily lose your career if you said the wrong thing. So you had to get every script approved. So it meant that they were much more imaginative in the worlds. They just showed no aristocrat could be seen as good, so they had to be corrupted, which is fine, because I think most people with lots of money probably are really corrupt. I'm good with that one. And it just became a world where reality was much more brutal and horrible, but this fantasy element going through it. And it just is wonderful. There's just a sense of an old fairy tale from Eastern Europe from centuries ago, where the world is horrible and difficult, and even when the fantastical comes, there's a price to be paid, and all your family might be horrible. Usually in Disney films, when you do the horrible family, it's caricatured so much you don't really feel the pain of having to deal with them for the main character. And this one, no, you feel the pain. These people are horrific. The people that are dealt with are horrific. It starts off with this guy who's made a massive bet on all these goods coming from the East, so he can sell them all and make a lot of money. He's invested so much in this, and then all these goods crash into a ravine in a terrific early scene. They're going through mud, they're going through all these things, and they just have no luck. And it showed you how precarious any investment was this time, because it was such a rough world to live in. So he loses all his money. His spoiled daughters are going insane, and they've been nasty as hell to the youngest daughter, obviously the beauty, the character. He goes to sell a painting to the Beast, even though the Beast's lands are laid to waste and are creepy as hell. He goes and does that, and the Beast gives him money because he picks a rose from the garden. He annoys the Beast. The Beast says, "It's either your life or your daughter's," and the guy prepares. It's either you die or your daughter comes and lives here for good. The guy's actually going to accept death until his daughter steals a horse and goes and lives with the Beast to protect her father, because that's the only person she loves. And it becomes a story of her learning to deal with the Beast. Now that's the weakest part of the film for me, because Beauty and the Beast is a story that's been well done a few times, but it's a story I find so predictable. And this one does it as good as any, but it's still a predictable story for me, so I find some of the story beats wearisome. But this one kept it going a lot longer than most. I just find that story to be difficult because I just think it's very predictable. And the moral tends to be pretty dull, and they tend to forget that the lead character was turned out a beast because he's horrible. And he learns redemption, but I think it's always kind of soft pedaled a lot of the time. So there's that kind of thing that always bugs me, and there's also the thing at the end that he has to change it back into this prince to actually, or this human to actually be acceptable, which I think is just dodgy as hell. So there's things like that in the story I don't like. This film does it really well because it's almost like the human beings are so rotten. The humans are genuinely rotten. It's like it's not turning into a human being. It's much more about turning into someone decent, really, and learning about your problems and not being, because the human beings like to see themselves dressed up and they think they're great. And the two sisters start off as nags. They get married and they nag their husbands, and they're just horrible people. They're greedy, and it's like they're the beasts. Really, they're the genuine beasts. You know, that are just out for themselves, out for their own pleasure. They don't care for people, and that's kind of the point of the film. Is a lot of these people are the beasts. Not the beast himself is a problem, but he's not he's minor compared to them. He's a person with problems. He's not a beast ultimately. But the design of the beast is terrific. It's very different from the normal. The beauty's terrific in it. She's very kind, and you really follow her. She's trying her best with all these difficult people. She's got a father who's trying to do his best, but also dealing with his own problems and dealing with his own ego. But he does love her. That's the big thing, and he does love his children, even though some of them would just hate him. And it's just like it takes like the Beauty and the Beast story and puts it in a family that's actually very dysfunctional. And say, well, how does it work here? That's what's great about Eastern European films is they can take lots of stuff and give it a reality that's very different from what you'd get in the more fantastical Hollywood version that tries to also make you aspire to be this character, and they take away all the fun, interesting flaws of a character. Hollywood stuff it shows a kind of cultural problem with Hollywood of America's. They want to aspire to things that aren't real, that's in their heads, that causes them to basically be insane sometimes. You know, what's this culture we've got nowadays if not a culture that thinks it's pure because it's watched a lot of films talking about being great and how wonderful you are. It's a culture that's got sick and we're told how great it is, you know. And the Beauty and the Beast, the Disney one's kind of like that. It's like, yeah, that's a kind of cultural thing that's going to lead to problems down the line. It's going to export to every other country. This one's a much healthier film. It's because it's about dealing with problematic family members and actually trying to have decency in a cruel and caring world. And there's wonderful supernatural stuff as well. But it gets rid of a lot of the stuff that I think's a problem with the kind of Americanization of fairy tales, which I think it really is privilege. People talk about privilege a lot. Disney films is all about how great people are and how wondering how you should love yourself, and it's like, no, we're very flawed creatures. I can't take that interpretation. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to avoid giving you too much. I'm giving you the sense of the world of Beauty and the Beast. The story. I'm trying to just tell the design. There's lots of wonderful, fantastical stuff, but I want to let you discover it yourself. But watch this film. Watch Trip to the Moon 2. They're both very different films in lots of ways, but they are kind of stories that actually have a kind of more realistic. Their effects are handcrafted, and they're just beautiful tales from the past. So, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with another one, but that's me for now.